As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICAN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized SEMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a SEMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICAN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the SEMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study exam. Start studying the SEMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
The Debt Management Office, the DMO, prepares the National Debt Management Framework, which we always refer to as the NDMF, every 5 years as a reference document detailing Nigeria's key debt management policies. They also discuss the strategies, the framework for effective public debt management. This framework is a compendium of all the statutory provisions, the regulations, the policies, and also the tools that will be used by the DMO in line with the international best practices for the management of public debt. Most times, we always assume the debt is not required, yet we know some things are required and while some aren't. The debt is actually built towards ensuring that the objectives of the public debt management, like the prudent management of the public debt, also to ensure that the debt contributes to economic growth and development, as well as poverty reduction. Today on ICAN on Air, we'll be discussing the topic, managing Nigeria's debt for sustainable development. And we have in the studio today, I call him Doctor, he's a PhD holder, Raymond O.C. Alenogene. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is the last day in the month of November 2023. Perhaps I should just say happy last day of the month of November to my dear colleagues and also the friends of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to another episode of ICAN on Air. My name remains Fumi Olani. Before we introduce our guests properly into the studio, let's go on a commercial break and we'll be right back with so much information with regards to the subject of today's session. We'll be right back after the commercials.
As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICAN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized SEMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a SEMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICAN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the SEMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study exam. Start studying the SEMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Welcome back into the studio. Today is still ICAN on Air, and like I said earlier, it's the last day in November, so we look forward to tomorrow, which is a brand new month. Today we'll be discussing the topic, managing Nigeria's debts for sustainable development, and we have in the studio Dr. Raymond O.C. Alenogene. I would like to read the profile of Dr. Raymond. all protocols duly observed. Dr. Raymond is a seasoned financial management executive with over 25 years of experience in the Nigerian financial market. He holds a bachelor degree from Ambrose Ali University, MBA in Uniben, Masters of Banking and Finance in the University of Lagos. He is an alumnus of the Lagos Business School, having completed senior management program. He started work at Alchi Polytechnic as a lecturer in 1988. Thereafter, he moved to Zenith Bank PLC in 1994 before joining Fidelity Bank as a full manager in 2001. He rose to become the bank's AGM in Southwest in 2008, and he was a retail regional manager, and he established about 10 new branches for Fidelity Bank PLC, both in Lagos and in Southwest of Nigeria. He also has experience in risk management and remedial management of Fidelity Bank. He exited the bank to set up a private consulting practice, and we're happy to welcome in the house because he's currently the head of Department of Economics at Trinity University, Yaba, Lagos, and still teaches as an adjunct lecturer of the Distant Learning Institute at the University of Lagos. He has 28 academic publications at local and international reputable academics journal. He's a member of several professional associations, including the National Economic Society, the Institute of Management Consultants of Nigeria, and the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. It is a pleasure to have you in the studio today, Dr. Raymond. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being with you. I greet the professionals, I greet friends of ICAN that are tuning in. It's a pleasure being with you. Thank you for the opportunity to interact with you. It's a sensitive subject.
Thank you so much, sir. You know, the topic is really, we'll say it across to say it's a reigning topic, it's trending, and yes, we have to speak about it. So my first question, sir, I just wanted to relate with you on what you, as an erudite scholar, would describe as debts, and when you say there are varying rates, there are types, there are qualities, and what are the features of the differentiation in the ways and manners that each country manages its debt? And perhaps, what would you call national debt? And what are the types of the national debt that are out there for our global viewers to understand better what you know?
Okay. A debt by a country or government is national debt, but a lot of the time, three concepts are used interchangeably: national debt, government debt, and public debt. Generally, they use them and there are not much different, but when we go into the details, national debt talks about central debt or federal government debt. But government debt is slightly larger, talks about the federal government debt, the state government debt, and the local government debt. It's specific on government borrowing. But when you are now including to all the government debt, you are now talking about debt by public corporations owned by government, all exposure in relations to government. We are now talking about public debt. Public debt. So though they are used interchangeably, they are highly related. It's when you go into those specifics. But once it is borrowed by an arm of government, it is a government debt. Government borrowing is at federal level, at state level, and at the local government level. But we also have other government institutions, MDAs, that borrow with the approval of government just to carry out specific activities. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, sir. So now we know the public debt is different from other debts. So thank you very much for shedding more light on that. Sir, through the prism of a nation, when we hear things, the phrases like the external debt or the domestic debt, there are positive advantages that one has over the other, or they are just Siamese twins. How can we differentiate the external debt from the domestic debt?
Okay, they are certainly not Siamese twins at all. They are not. External debt is government borrowing from outside the country. When government borrows, could be from individuals, could be from other governments, could be from other clubs like Paris Club and London Club, could be from multilateral organizations like IMF, World Bank, ADB. We could talk of International Bank for Reconstruction. There are so many. Once it is outside the country, it is called external or foreign debt. And foreign debt relationship, issues with foreign debt. Foreign debt, most of the time, the lender has control over deciding how the debt should be used. So when developing countries started off with external debt, they were having what we call conditionality. That's the lender deciding what they want them to do with it. They will also have a problem with exchange rate risk, because when they are repaying, it's possible the exchange rate at which they borrowed is not the same. And then external debt is most of the time laced with what we call debt overhang. It induces conditions that a lot of the time makes it difficult to service the debt and puts the country in problems. So when a lot of developing countries found out this, they decided to develop their internal debt so that they borrow from the internal financial institutions. So internal debt are debt that are borrowed from local institutions or individuals. And we have long-term, we have short-term. For instance, in Nigeria, we have the capital market, we have the money market where we have commercial banks. Then we also have bonds. Government can float bonds. Government can also borrow by treasury bills. But the danger in borrowing internally is that the government finds itself competing with local borrowers. If government borrows too much from the market, they edge out private investors from the market, because money for lending most of the time is limited. So it is called crowding out effect. So government should be careful about internal borrowing. But the purpose of internal borrowing is to sometimes develop the market when the market is not active, and then also to leverage the banks, give some support to the banks by borrowing from them. But a lot of the time, some banks take advantage of that. When they take advantage, they become lazy, especially when they are meeting their targets and government is borrowing all the money they need. We call that the lazy bank hypothesis. It's induced by internal borrowing. So that is all about internal borrowing. Why internal borrowing can cause the crowding out effect, external borrowing most of the time causes what we call debt overhang. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I love the way you ended that. Debt overhang. I hope Nigeria is not in that situation currently. But of course, thank you very much for taking us into the classroom. For my audience, I will say welcome to ICAN on Air again. I would advise that you get your notes pad and also your pen, because there's so much you need to learn from this session today. So, sir, Dr. Raymond, given our current debt profile, will it be wrong or out of place to say that the current generation of Nigerian leaders is laying a debt trap for the future generation of Nigerians?
To an extent, a lot of borrowing is done by government, leaving behind huge burden for incoming government. And it's not right. It's not right. And then if you go into the details of this debt, especially a lot of debt that Nigeria has incurred, you find very little stories about them, history about them, information about them. For instance, you look at the debt on which the country is servicing, paying so much to service. You see that they are not tied to assets. That is what is supposed to happen anytime government borrows. Anytime government borrows, it's supposed to be tied to an asset that will repay the loan, and it's supposed to be carefully managed in such a way that it does not burden the government itself. Government can partner, not that government will borrow money just to do recurrent expenditure, pay salaries. We have a lot of that in Nigeria, and putting so much pressure on new government taking over from the previous one. And it is not right. It's certainly, certainly not right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope our government is listening right now. We don't want such situation where we are borrowing for recurrent expenditure. It doesn't help the economy in any way. So, one opinion as a Nigerian, sir, I know you work and you live in Nigeria. Would you give us a fair and unbiased assessment of what the Nigerian economy is in terms of growing? Is it growing? Is it static? Is it declining in your own opinion? Now, what is the reason for this, sir?
Okay, in my opinion, the the Nigerian economy has really been budding, but it's a very resilient economy, a very strong economy. Why am I saying that? With all the mismanagement and corruption, the country is still going strong. In the past 5 years, except in 2020 as a result of the COVID, that is the only time we had negative economic growth. And these are figures that are being paraded by international organizations and local organizations. Okay, in 2021, the country grew by 3.65%. In 2022, the country grew by 3.25% every year. Even the first 3 quarters of this year, first quarter is 2.31, second quarter is 2.51, third quarter is 2.54. And all estimates used to be above 3%. But you know, this is an election year, presidential election year for that matter. We have already averaged over 2.5%. And right now, the projection is that the economy will grow by not less than about 2.87% at the end of the day for 2023, which is this year. Now, this is a very strong economy. A strong economy, the largest economy in Africa, though closely followed by Egypt and South Africa, but very resilient. And new things are being done. For instance, we have a fast-growing economy in services. We have a fast-growing economy in information and communication. Though agriculture has not grown because, to me, I see the incentive is not there. Manufacturing itself also is having issues. But the truth of the matter is that when things are put in proper perspective, this country still has a lot of chance. And the country is growing. And the projection for 2024 is above 3%, though Tinubu is talking about his own about 3.75 or thereabout, which is very high. But then it will be above 3%. We are talking about figures by World Bank, figures by we are talking about Fitch and all that. So it's a growing economy. I have a lot of confidence in this economy. And this economy is going to still do well. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Just picking some of your words, and I want to take it from where you ended to say one opinion group, they see debt as something good, while another group would say debt is something poisonous. So, for you, what would you consider a debt? Is it necessary? Is it a friend? Is it a foe? Or in what way would you actually classify debt, sir?
Okay, you see, a debt is form that you take to be able to enhance your position either as a business or as a country. In accounting, you people call it leverage, especially when you combine it with equity. It's the same thing with government. A debt can lead to the creation of relationship. A debt, you use a debt. Basically and primarily, a debt is supposed to, a government debt is for stabilization. You are supposed to take a debt during recession or when the economy is low because the finances are not enough. And then you pay back, it's because the economy will always recover. But we have seen situations of abuses. That does not mean that debt is bad. Government also takes debt to execute very sensitive projects, which is what is going on now. You take debt to execute a project that will improve the economy, that will improve the productivity of the economy. There is nothing bad in that. But it's just that when you take a debt and it's not properly managed, it doesn't remove the fact that a debt is a good thing and it is necessary. It is necessary because you need it, especially to enhance your infrastructure in a country. For instance, we are talking about roads, good roads. We are talking about electricity. We are talking about other things, construction, real estate, and so on and so forth. Debt is used every day. Even the United States, the biggest nation in the world, is into a whole lot of debt for financing its budget continuously. So a debt, as far as I'm concerned, because people have abused it, a debt is a friend. A debt is something necessary. A debt will enhance public relations. A debt will assist you to finance very important projects. And a debt will also, for instance, help in growing your domestic market. If debt is not there, you see, we float all sorts of bonds. There are bonds, private bonds, public bonds. For instance, in Nigeria now, we are talking about so-called bonds, we are talking about green bonds, we are talking about federal government savings bonds, and so on and so forth. And these make the market very active. So debt, they are all based on debt. So a debt is a good thing. And you also use debt to control the economy because through treasury bills and others, the central bank can either improve the money in circulation or reduce the volume of money in circulation. And it is through debt that we achieve all this. So to talk about stable money supply and management of the monetary policy, we also use debt. So debt is a good thing. But the most important fact about debt is that when a government takes a debt, all machinery should be put in motion to carefully manage that debt so that at the end of the day, it is repaid. Where it is taken or used by government without being put into investment, it will be repaid from the taxes of the citizens, which is from the sweat of the citizens. So a debt should be carefully managed. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. If I properly captured all that you said, it's just about saying too much of everything is bad. So thank you very much, Dr. Raymond, for letting us into that part of debt. So I'd like to recognize some of our audience. I'll say Alex Ezomon from Benin City, Edo State. You're welcome. Losin Ahmed from Port Harcourt. We say welcome to the program today. Fagbola Temita, we see you all the time and we say thank you for joining from Ibadan. I see Linus from Enugu. We see from Akodi Binde. And I also see Johnson, who is from Lagos State. So prepare your questions. We have the man who can answer all of these questions because he's a lecturer and he's a doctor. So please prepare your questions. We'll take them as soon as we have them. So Doc, as a trained economist with close to 2 decades of practical banking work experience, what is debt management? And what is your opinion on the way and manner in which Nigerians' debt is being managed today?
Okay, debt management talks about bringing debt under control through financial planning and budgeting. Debt management starts from negotiation to ensure that it meets the reason why you want to borrow. That is the borrowing cost. Then debt management also follows through to ensure that you meet the conditions precedent to draw down. Debt management follows through to the implementation of the debt, the execution of the debt, bidding of the project, and then following through to ensure effective management so that it ensures repayment. But talking about debt management in Nigeria, certainly it has been poor. It has been poor because it has been taken out of the hands of professionals in the management of debt itself. So it's been poor because look at the signs are not good at all. the country engages in too much borrowing, even when there is huge earning of foreign exchange from oil. If you go through, Nigeria has virtually been in budget deficit right from the 70s. Even years where we earn a lot of money through oil sales, those years we still borrow when it's not necessary. It's only during the Obasanjo administration that we brought down borrowing, and it paid off the external debt. So look at a situation where, like you mentioned yourself, the leaves behind debt for incoming administration. For instance, the first half of this year, we have debt service of about 2.3 trillion, which is about 73% of the total revenue for that period. You can imagine. We are talking of just debt service. We are not talking about repayment of principal. Then, the structure of the debt is another thing. We see repayment and servicing on so many debts that you cannot track the assets on which they were put. It's not a good thing. Debt management in Nigeria has been very poor. And then we see situations where some debt are specifically listed for some assets. At the end of the day, the assets are left hanging and the assets, most of the time, unmanaged. So these are some of the features that cast very poor shadow on debt management in Nigeria. For instance, like I said, just keep a list on the debt that Nigeria is paying, is servicing. You are going to see a huge list, quite some lists, except the recent ones. The recent ones, like the China debt and others, they are the ones that you can point at the assets. You can see the assets. That is not supposed to be the case. All government debts are supposed to be asset related, such that the assets are managed for the repayment. That's why you see, for instance, we are talking about paying over 70% of revenue on just servicing. What about when you want to start talking about the repayment of principal? Government is not supposed to have business with a lot of the repayment. Nigerian government takes on too much debt. So that is an issue, and it's an issue that should be well handled. So if this is supposed to come down, Nigeria is supposed to sell off some of these debts, commercialize them, financialize them, so that private sector will come in and manage them. It's still possible in some of the cases. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raymond. And remember, it's still ICAN on air, and we have in the house Dr. Raymond discussing managing Nigerians' debt for sustainable development. We'd like to go on a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll take the questions from the audience. Get your questions ready, because we are ready to take them all on. Thank you, and we'll be right back.
As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICAN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized CIMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a CIMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICAN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the CIMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study exam. Start studying the CIMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Security is key to national development and growth. No nation can be truly economically successful without peace and stability, or when its security is threatened. This is why we must perform our civic obligation of duly paying our taxes so as to provide the needed resources for government to secure our lives and properties. When we pay our taxes, government is provided with the needed resources to equip our security agencies for a safer Nigeria. The money we pay as taxes is used to purchase equipment and hardware, invest in intelligence and other sophisticated technology, as well as cater for the welfare of all security personnel. A secure nation is a prosperous nation. Nigeria is safer when we pay our taxes. FIRS, it pays to pay your tax.
You're welcome back to ICAN on Air today, the 30th day of November 2023. And we have in the house Dr. Raymond Allen-Ogene. Thank you so much again for being here, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being with you.
Thank you. So, we've been discussing a lot of things. I have learned so much because I have my jotter full already. My page 1 and almost page 2 is full of information. And I guess you're writing too. So, Doctor, I would like to particularly ask about, when you look back into the democratic governance in 1999, and it's on record that between 1999 and 2007, former President Obasanjo was able to actually reduce and manage the nation's debt. Today, Nigeria's debt profile has ballooned to a scary level. And in your personal opinion, sir, what must have gone wrong?
It's what happens when you have government that don't care about the future of the country. Because when you take a debt, and that debt is shrouded in uncertainty, it's leaving a burden for the future. You take so much debt, if every government comes in and does that, the country will collapse. A debt is can so easily collapse a country. So Obasanjo did the right thing, set a good example. He brought down Nigeria's debt from above 6 billion to less than 2 billion. He paid off the most difficult ones, which were the Paris Club and the London Club, and then decided to start borrowing from our internal financial market. That was done in the right direction. But you have other governments that just come in, they borrow, they feel that whoever is coming in is going to pay. It's not right. It's not the government officials that are paying. The debt is primarily repaid from the taxes of the citizens. What do we have? We have a situation where we have debt. Talking of Obasanjo, brought it down to 2 billion, to 2 billion. Then we have moved it. Right now, we are on about 87 trillion. Out of that 87 trillion, we are talking about ways and means of about 21 trillion, all taken from the central bank, used to fund the economy, used to fund things that are in the economy that were not backed by very clear transactions. This is not good enough. It's not good enough. So we have the current administration inheriting a very terrible situation. We are talking of a situation where our debt to GDP has gone up to about 40%, though the World Bank recommended about 45% for Nigeria, which means we have very little leeway. A lot of people have done the stress test, like I did in I did threshold of Nigerian debt or domestic debt. It's in one of my publications. I found out that by the time debt is going above 18 to 20% of our GDP, it becomes inimical. It becomes too much to manage. Maybe a lot of it is still far away. So I recommended debt that should always be below 18%. So when we do these stress tests, we have to find what we call a threshold for our debt. And we expect governments to obey those thresholds. If they obey those thresholds, we would have this kind of situation that we are in. The Nigerian debts are scaring people, not because they are so large, but because the fundamentals for the payment are not so adequate. We're talking of a country heavily leveraged because the productivity is not high, because manufacturing has not picked up, because in agriculture we are still importing food. We don't have any business importing. So these are the things that are mind-boggling. They are mind-boggling, and then we continue to incur the debt. We just not fixing those fundamentals that we are supposed to look at. So it's not good for government not to respect debt threshold. It's not good for government to find out whether a debt will be inimical to the economy or not. To just go ahead and bring in the money, and sometimes it may be tied to an asset, sometimes it may not be tied to an asset. In some cases where it is tied to an asset, sometimes at the end of the day, you find out that it is not viable, that what that asset is generating is not enough to fully repay. And then you fall back to either the federal government or the state government, who will keep servicing and planning for the repayment of the debt interest and principal. Like I said, Obasanjo did a good thing. He was very prudent. He didn't understand what was happening. He decided to pay off external debt and then decided to mobilize the internal market. That is from that time that we started talking about domestic debt. Started talking about borrowing, rolling out on bonds, and so on and so forth. So kudos to him. He will always be remembered in history. So we are looking forward to any other administration that will manage Nigeria so prudently. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We're quite optimistic about Nigeria, and I believe so much in this country, Nigeria. That is why we're all here in Nigeria. So, sir, under the current government, because I know we have talked about Obasanjo's tenure, you recall that subsidy was finally removed on the price of premium motor spirit, the PMS, and the Nigerian naira was floated. Although Nigerians actually, the journey to full, we don't understand the journey to full economic recovery. I know it's a long one, but many Nigerians are expecting that the nation's borrowings and the debts will start reducing. But the reverse happens to be the case. As the seasoned economist, sir, what really is going on?
What is going on is that, you see, you go into history anytime you have a new administration. The Tinubu administration, I don't expect the administration to concentrate too much on paying off debt, because that's not what he believes in. It doesn't mean that he does not run the economy or he will not run government buoyantly. He will run government buoyantly. He will make government very active. But you see, different individuals have different penchants for the management of debt. He cannot follow Obasanjo's footsteps. The removal of fuel subsidy. If Nigerian fuel subsidy was well managed, there was no problem. It was not well managed. There was so much scam attached to it. For instance, in 2022, the country spent 4.5 trillion out of a budget of roughly 21 trillion just to pay fuel subsidy, out of which a large segment of it was scam. That's number one. Number two, the entire West African region, the fuel was being sponsored by Nigerian fuel subsidy. Many of them were enjoying subsidy from Nigeria, and they are not Nigerians, and this is not fair. So as far as I'm concerned, it was the right decision to remove the subsidy, but the manner in which it was removed is my problem. The country was not prepared. The country did not have refineries working. Then all of a sudden, and then the burden was so much. But if the country was prepared and you have refineries running, I think to me, it could have taken it easy, even if people will demonstrate, get the refineries running and remove it. So the fuel subsidy removal is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing as far as I'm concerned. But talking about the economic direction, I think the economy will pick up. The economy will pick up because the president is getting over fighting this political battle. He will settle down. No matter how you look at it, he has a track record, and then we expect him to settle down and move in the right direction. And when we get there, we'll still talk about some of the things that is already going right and those things that he needs to do. Thank you.
Thank you. So Dr. Allen Ogena has promised that because the political distractions are over, we will see something different in Nigeria very soon. But you know, the nation's growth and development require effective administration, sir. And also, I would call it sound economic management. And based on the practical economic realities on ground, what would you then say about Nigeria's economic growth and sustainable development?
Okay, Nigeria's economic growth and sustainable development, that has really, really been a burden on Nigeria. Nigeria has had first development plan, second development plan, third development plan, up to fifth, and then we started with rolling plan. That problem was not with plans. Our problem had to do with execution, had to do with genuine commitment to the plans and execution. And when we talk about managing the country for effective growth and sustainability, the stories on the developed countries, they are there. They are abundant. They are in the literature. Many of them start with the fact that you should start from agriculture, and there is no fallacy about that. How can you have to be self-sufficient in food production? Agriculture is so big, it's so large, it's so versatile. When you start from there, it will release funds and skilled labor into manufacturing. And then you continue with manufacturing that is indigenously based, manufacturing that is focused on your abundant natural resources, that we evolve and start to use technology and grow those resources so that you'll be able to export what you're able to produce. And then at the end of the day, you achieve development that is self-sustaining because it came from you, not the kind of development that you have in manufacturing sector that is dependent on imported inputs by over 70%. Once there is no foreign exchange, the manufacturing sector will not perform. That is not development. So when we talk about sustainable development, we talk about an effective economic plan, a long-term plan, well conceived, that looks at the relevant sectors of the economy, how they relate to each other, and then mobilization of true leaders who are committed to implementing those plans, ensuring that you have good, versatile agriculture, you have the type of manufacturing that is linked to your local and natural resources, and you have schools that are making research, education that is making research into all those. And then the emphasis at the end of the day, when we talk about growth and development, emphasis is on productivity and output. You can't take that away. Productivity and output in agriculture, productivity and output in manufacturing, productivity and output in real estate, in construction, in transport, productivity and output in power. That is what it's all about. And it's productivity and output in government at federal level, at state level. This country is blessed. It's just for us to exploit the resources we have. Not that we should be looking at Abuja to be able to see what is coming in for allocation. That's not what government is all about. how much have you been able to, be able to develop your state? Have you called your local governments together to say, okay, what and what do you have? What can we develop? What can we invest in?
Exactly.
These are the issues. These are the issues. So it has to do with governance, not plans. We have had very fantastic plans in the past, but they have not put any food on our table. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I love the passion to which you speak on this topic, sir. And this is almost recent because it happened yesterday, where the Mr. President actually presented the 2024 budget. And during his speech, he mentioned that the budget deficit was projected at about 9.18 trillion, and the deficit is expected to be financed through new borrowings. What would you say? I mean, what does the new borrowing plan say about Nigeria's debt management discipline? And another part to it, sir, is that, the Nigerians' debt to revenue in terms of the ratio as of December 2022 was estimated as 95%. So based on the budget and what was presented yesterday, do you actually foresee an improvement?
Well, based on the budget, I foresee an improvement. The country will continue to borrow because there is no option for now. So what I expect is for the government to release some funds, internal funds, from sale of assets, and then also from recovery of looted funds, since so much of that was seen in the past administration, and reduce the borrowing. But as that is not so forthcoming in the immediate time, we have to look at some level of borrowing to be able to carry out the projects that we are talking about. I don't have any problem. I don't have much problem with this budget. This budget is moderate, an improvement on last year's budget. We're talking about 27.5 trillion. Last year's budget was 21.8 trillion. But we are also talking about a budget deficit of 9.8 trillion. That is 3.88% of the budget. But last year, the budget deficit was 13.78 trillion, which was 6.11% of GDP. So the issue is that I don't see him having much leeway apart from borrowing in the immediate term. The important thing is when you borrow, you use it effectively. Then the other aspect that I'm so happy with when I saw is like he was looking at the issues that are dear to my heart. He talked about security and a lot of votes on security. He talked about infrastructure, specifically mentioning transport and power. And then just before he presented the budget, he gave a directive for massive road maintenance, road rehabilitation and maintenance. Then we are talking about power. We are talking about works and housing in the budget. We're talking about education. And then at the end of the day, he was talking about how he will improve employment and then the ease of doing business. Even the vote on air improved. So it's not all lost. It has the relevant area, very important. He's picking them up and he's emphasizing them. So we expect him to do more in this area, especially in terms of the real efficiency. We are talking of effectiveness in project delivery and management, so that we cut down on all the loose ends that we are having in the economy. The budget, as far as I'm concerned, is okay. The budget is okay. And he has emphasized some very important areas that are germane for this economy to run. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So it's still managing Nigeria's debt for sustainable development. And we have questions already from the audience. I mean, we have a lot of questions already, sir. I hope you're ready to take all this in because our members always have intelligent questions that will change Nigeria as a whole. So Onuma NS Chukwu Naru says, Sir, is Nigeria's debt a good debt or a bad debt, considering the profile and structure without commensurate infrastructures and defined repayment plans? I know because you mentioned the positive and the negative side of debt. So right now he's saying, what without the commensurate infrastructures and defined repayment plan? What would you say about that, sir? Is it good or bad? Okay, I guess Dr. Raymond. Okay, we'll try to see how Dr. Raymond will get back into the studio. But we'd like to recognize our members here. We say thank you very much, Ifeanyi, for joining. Shosa Olusoji from Ogun State, thank you very much for being part of today's session. And we'll say Abel Aigbodion Asian. Thank you very much. You're always here. We see you and we recognize you this evening. Olopade Lukman, thank you so much. Gloria Isaac, thank you for being here. And we have Audrey Williams. Thank you so much for being here. It's still an interesting topic with a lecturer from the Trinity University, Yaba Lagos, is discussing how we can manage our debt in Nigeria for sustainable development. And we have a lot of questions already that we need to ask him as much as possible, the ones that he has taken. I have my notes full, and we must understand that the government of today is doing all it can to ensure that we reduce the borrowings, we reduce the debts. But how can we do this? So, Dr. Raymond, it's good to have you back. I know, I mean, the situation happened, internet happened, or perhaps anything happened. You're welcome, sir.
Hello.
All right, you are here, sir. We can.
Okay, so sorry. Can you repeat that question? I'm very sorry.
Okay, so the audience wanted to know what it says there are good debts and there are bad debts, and it's trying to see without the relevant infrastructure. So the question is Nigeria's debt. Is it a good debt or is it a bad debt? Considering the profile and the structure without commensurate infrastructures and defined repayment plans.
Okay, you know, when you look at Nigeria's debt, it's not one debt. It's not one. So you cannot just categorize all of them. We have some of them good, some of them bad. For instance, when you talk about the debts that you cannot trace to assets that is supposed to repay them, debts that were taken to pay salaries, those are bad debts. But debts that you can link to specific assets that should be used to repay the debts, then you are talking about like railway debts in Nigeria. Those are good debts. We have some other debts that are also good. So we can't categorize all of them as one debt, whether the debt of Nigeria is good or is bad. We have to break it down and we have to link each debt. The one we can link to an asset that is productive, then it is a good debt. Then those that we cannot link, they are bad debts. That is my answer.
All right, thank you so much. I mean, that was well said, sir. Now that we're in the 2024 budget period and it has been presented by Mr. President, and you know, you understand, please advise, if you have the privilege of advising Mr. President on the budget, on managing Nigeria's debt for sustainable development, please, would you like to let us know what you would present to him? And also, what is your assessment of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration? And what is your recommendation to the government of today, sir?
Okay, first, managing Nigeria's debts. Certainly, I've said something about that before. When we are talking about managing debts, a lot of it has not been linked to assets. So those debts that are not linked to assets, we have to look for ways to link them to the assets for which they were taken. That is the process. And then we can sell them to the private sector. That is the process of trying to commercialize our debts for the ones that we can do. Then we're also talking about maintaining thresholds of debts. We should not go beyond limits that become inimical to our economy. We should maintain thresholds. Then also, we should carefully assess debts before we take them. We should be sure that they are into viable ventures that will assist in the repayment and make the economy buoyant. Those are the kind of debts we should take. We should not take debts that, we have not done enough analysis on the purpose of the debt. We should not take those ones just because they are available. Then we go to the Bola Tinubu administration. Bola Tinubu administration certainly has done well in a number of areas already within the short period. For instance, his trip to the US, to Middle East, and to Germany to seek foreign direct investment is okay. Then also his reforms on tax policies and fiscal administration is also beautiful. Then he is trying to do some things on foreign exchange. And then at the same time, he has shown interest in power. And then the other one that is very good in the area he has done well is the building of road infrastructure. He has shown very clearly. And then the minister he put there is very effective. So that's another very good one. But the area he has not done too well, or I would say I will advise him on, is coming up with an economic blueprint that is very clear. Coming up with a blueprint and showing direction for productivity is very important. And then when he comes up with this blueprint, he must list his areas of priorities. And these areas of priorities must be showcased in all our platforms, international platforms, all our embassies. And then these are the areas we will invite foreign investors in. Many countries have done this. They show their areas of priorities, like Brazil, like India, like Saudi Arabia. They don't just allow you to come in. These areas will be in the economic blueprint. We expect the Bola Tinubu administration to draw his economic blueprint and indicate these areas. Because when productivity comes and you have good food supply, you have good roads, you will have good residential outfits, you have very buoyant industries. You don't need to be looking for who will help you to be managing foreign exchange. We are talking about foreign exchange management every day as if it's something else. It's because what we are earning is not enough. If we earn enough foreign exchange, we will be battling to be managing it. Then my list of priority areas, please.
Okay, sir.
List of priority areas: agriculture, manufacturing, security, power and road infrastructure, construction and real estate, creative industries, digital space. These are my areas I recommend to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I mean, we have a lot of questions, but of course, we do not have any time. We've run out of time completely on the program. I'd like to say thank you so much, Dr. Raymond. And we know that you collaborate with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, and you will help us grow the economy with your knowledge and with your strength. Thank you once again. I would say thank you so much for being here, and have yourself a good evening, sir.
Thank you very much. For the audience, I really appreciate you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I'll just like to take one or two announcements, which is about the fellowship conferment. Please reach out to the Institute for the induction also. Reach out to the Institute or go to the ICAN portal to get all the information about the announcements that we have today, including the induction, conferments, the training sessions that will happen. Thank you everyone for being here. My name remains Fumi Olani, and it's a great time we spent a great time together, and I hope that you'll be with us next week also. Same time, 6 p.m. on Thursday. Have yourself a good evening, everyone.